morning, everyone, and welcome to this Music Therapy Research at KU Expanding Collaborations with the University of Costa Rica webinar. This webinar is organized by the Vice Rectory of Research and the Office of International Affairs and External Cooperation of the Universidad de Costa Rica in collaboration with the Universidad de Kansas. This webinar takes place as part of the celebration of the 65th anniversary or former cooperation between the University of Kansas and Universidad de Costa Rica, and also within the framework of International Pillar on Science Diplomacy. Before we dive into the content, I'd like to express our gratitude to all of you for joining us today. The power of technology allows us to connect and learn from experts and thought leaders from around the world, no matter where we are. Definitely a great example of our resilience and adaptability. My name is Saida Ugalde, and along with my colleague, Maria Isabel Alcázar, we will be moderating this webinar. It is an honor for us as KU staff in Costa Rica to be part of this exciting event, which promises to be informative and engaging at the same time. We have assembled a panel of experts who will be sharing their insights in the field of music therapy and music. Whether you're here to gain new knowledge or explore innovative ideas, we are confident that you will find value in these discussions. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, Dr. Diana Hansen-Abrameit. Dr. Hansen-Abrameit is an associate professor at the University of Kansas and a board-certified music therapist. She has 28 years of clinical experience, primarily in healthcare, and has been a music therapy educator for 18 years. She leads the Baby Music Intervention Research Lab at KU and developed the therapeutic function of music plan as a framework to identify the specific features of music element as, I'm sorry, okay. As the active agent for change in music interventions and to deepen the theoretical understanding of how and why music functions for change. Dr. Hansen-Abrameit received the 2020 Music Therapy Association Research and Publication Award, and her most recent award was the 2023 School of Music Outstanding Teaching Award. Our second speaker is Dr. William Matney. Dr. Matney joined the KU staff in the fall of 2016. As a clinician, he worked primarily in special education settings and in private practice clinician with a range of populations. His most current interests are, because he has a lot, are musicianship in music therapy, percussion-based intervention in music therapy, the role of philosophy and theory in research and practice. He authored and co-authored books, Tataku, The Use of Percussion in Music Therapy, Roots and Branches, Songs of Traditions and Culture, and the upcoming book, A Graphic Guide to Music Therapy. He currently serves as an associate editor for the Nordic Journal of Music Therapy. His book, Roots and Branches, Songs of Traditions and Culture, is a rich compilation of songs from around the world, celebrating the cultural diversity of music. This book also includes, by the way, some of the songs are in Spanish and Portuguese from Central and South America as well. Our third participant is Dr. Javier Valerio, and he's a participant from the University of Costa Rica. Dr. Valerio is a renowned classical saxophonist and a leading figure in Latin American saxophone scene. He serves as the current president of the Latin American Saxophone Alliance, ALASAX. After studying under the world-renowned Eugene Rousseau at Indiana University School of Music, Dr. Valerio returned to Costa Rica, where he established the saxophone studio as a distinguished professor at Universidad de Costa Rica. He's also the founder and director of the Sax Fest Costa Rica International, as well as he's also an acclaimed saxophone and as the acclaimed saxophone quintet, Son Sax. I'm sure a lot of us have heard him with Son Sax. He has also performed as a soloist with many symphony orchestras and concerts and bands around the world, including the Montreal International Jazz Festival, World Saxophone Congresses and Latin America Saxophone Alliance Congresses. In 2013, Valerio was invited to perform with the University of Kansas Wind Ensemble at the Carnegie Hall Stern in New York City. He's also very active in the popular music scene and has served as a jury member of numerous saxophone competitions worldwide. Welcome and thank you very much for your participation today. Also, we invite our viewers on the live broadcast to join the conversation by leaving questions and comments for our speakers. And now please join me in welcoming Professor Hanson, Abramite, and Matney to this first session of the webinar. Professor Valeri will follow after after the initial presentation. Welcome, Dr. Hanson Abramite.
Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be here with all of you. That was a lovely introduction, Zeta. We also want to welcome the director of our music therapy program here at the University of Kansas, Cindy Caldwell, who was able to rearrange her schedule so that she could be here. Dr. Caldwell is the director of music therapy at the University of Kansas. She has been on faculty here for 24 years. And she has two primary global research areas. First, inclusion of students with disabilities in music settings, and the use of ORF-based music therapy in diverse clinical settings, including the Cancer Center at the University of Kansas Health System. She's also an active person leading the research in the American Music Therapy Association as the director there, or chair, I guess, of the research committee for the American Music Therapy Association. And she is currently a co-editor of an Oxford Press handbook with the working title of Handbook of Special Music Education and Music Therapy, and is working on a scoping review addressing the emotional approach of coping for adults in supportive cancer care. So we're really happy that she can join us as well. I'm going to begin my slide deck here so that we can share with you in English, and I also learned that we can translate the closed captioning to Spanish, so I'm hoping that will also help. Okay, can everyone see our slides? Hope that is working for everyone. So we're really delighted to be here with all of you in celebration of 65 years of collaboration. And to give you a context of what we're going to bring here for discussion is we're just going to talk a little bit about what music therapy is to help everyone get a clear understanding of that. And then we're going to talk about what's the current state of research in music therapy, primarily from a United States perspective, but that's also influenced by what's happening globally in music therapy. Then we'll talk specifically about music therapy research at the University of Kansas and our PhD program and what some of our students, current and past students, are doing in terms of their research. And then finally, I took this opportunity to do a little bit of a deep dive into what I could discover from colleagues in the literature about what's happening in Costa Rica related to music therapy that I think will set us up nicely for a conversation towards the end. So I want to start first primarily with getting us thinking about music therapy as a profession is both an art and a science. We are looking at music therapy in terms of what's the art, the music, but also the science, how music actually facilitates change and well-being in the individuals with whom we're working. And that we see ourselves as scientists and as artists, musicians, who can bridge the two areas. And it's really a very interdisciplinary approach. Music therapy has been around for a very long time. It emerged as a profession in the mid-1940s in the United States, and about the same time in other areas of the world, primarily in Europe. The American Music Therapy Association is, as far as my understanding, is one of the oldest music therapy professional organizations in the world. But we also have this very robust World Federation of Music Therapy that has a conference every 3 years. We just had a conference in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, which was very well attended. And it was lovely to meet people from around the world conducting music therapy practice and research, including countries that are have music therapy emerging as a profession. We are board certified music therapists, and that certification is facilitated and monitored by the Certification Board for Music Therapy, for music therapists. And we just reached 10,000 and a few more board certified music therapists in this last year. So we're very excited about that accomplishment. Bill.
So depending on your exposure to what music therapy is, we wanted to give a brief overview. Music therapy is an allied healthcare profession. And because of that, we have quite a bit of training. In the United States, our expectations are that one completes an undergraduate degree, an internship, and then completes that board certification exam. So there is a range of unique knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors that are needed to be a professional music therapist. The reasons being, we are looking to use music in unique ways to promote health. And we also need to take into account, just like every other healthcare profession, that we need to reduce harm. And that's why training is so important. That in every instance of the use of music, we're not only promoting health, but making sure that we're doing it in an appropriate and ethical way. We are always thinking in relation to the clients that we work with. So not only is there the music, the art, and the science of what we do, but that consideration of relationship. We seek to promote outcomes in health in a range of domains, and that might be related to physical or physiological considerations such as movement, might be related to emotions such as anxiety reduction, might be related to social considerations, getting people to work together or to be more socially aware. There are a broad range of health needs that we seek to work with clients on. And through the interventions that we create, we are using music and those particular characteristics of music to promote health in those domains. So a music therapist, therefore, is a musician, but a unique type of musician. We commonly are using guitars and voice and piano and percussion and electronic instruments because we're often using musics from around the world, folk musics, popular musics, musics that people are commonly familiar with. And we use that musicianship to be in relation with those clients and to think therapeutically, to promote those outcomes in health. And we have to be trained and knowledgeable in both our musicianship and our therapy qualities. And we have to be able to think not only in terms of planning, but be able to modify our plans in the moment. And one of the things that we try to do also at KU is to think about the problems that don't even exist yet. And I'm sure that Dr. Hansen-Abermite will discuss that further later.
So we want to spend some time talking about some of the current trends in music therapy research and what's happening here in the United States that is actually shifting some of the ways in which we are approaching graduate education here, and also how we're thinking about our own research and capacity as well. We have found in the last decade, like less than a decade, actually, last 10 years or so, 7 or 8 years, that there's been a very increased interest in music-based interventions and in the arts within the context of health and research. And this is coming from a higher level of engagement from things like funding agencies at the federal level in the United States. So in 2017, basically came out of a conversation similar to this, but a little bit less formal, the Sound Health Initiative was activated with the National Institutes of Health and a Kennedy Center partnership that included Renee Fleming, a renowned opera singer who has the Renee Fleming Foundation. Through that partnership and the beginning of conversations and this initiative for sound health, the Sound Health Initiative set research priorities and recommendations about music-based interventions, really looking for how can we increase our understanding of the way in which the brain processes music, to develop scientifically based strategies to enhance normal brain development and function, and to advance evidence-based music interventions for brain diseases and human health. That initiative then created a federal funding specifically aimed at music-based interventions that became available for individuals and organizations to apply for in 2019. And this was really the very first time that there was federal level National Institutes of Health monies available for research directly and specifically for music-based interventions. So this was a very exciting time for those of us in music therapy who are engaging in music-based interventions and music intervention research. Then in 2021, we saw the launch of the Sound Health Network, and the Sound Health Network has a mission to promote research and public awareness about the impact of music on health and wellness. And their initiatives are really towards raising awareness in the community, but also within the education systems and promoting those who are doing music-based intervention research and practices. How is music changing people's lives at a variety of levels, including music therapy? Last fall, about a year ago, I was very honored to be part of the Kennedy Center Sound Health Remix, which was an event that pulled together people that were engaged in music-based intervention research and was looking at where have we come from 2017 to 2022 and what do we need to do and how do we need to move forward. So in the National Institutes of Health panel presentation, they provided a summary of the current state of the music-based intervention research. And they basically gave some very distinct ideas of what they're understanding and what needs to happen. So they're really asking for a closer examination of the music components that are important for change and how music interventions are being delivered. So really being able to think clearly and report transparently, are music interventions being delivered in a receptive way, so like music listening, or in an active way in which people are actively participating in the music experience? And what's the context? Is it an individual music intervention or is it a group-based intervention? They also called for a need for common language and consistent terminology. This is something that the music therapy profession has struggled with for a very long time, using different words to mean the same thing. And in the National Institutes of Health panel, the thing that they recognized was that we don't always use the same terminology and that consistency is really important. They also advocated for a need to understand the neural and physiological responses to music and the potential therapeutic effects. So there is moderate to strong evidence from randomized control trials that music-based interventions can benefit pain perception, yet few look at how music does this. And most of the literature that we have that's robust enough is really looking at pain perception. They also noted challenges from the pain and music literature that need to be addressed that are translational to the other areas of intervention research that we do. And these noted challenges include a lack of overall research framework, again, the lack of a consistent terminology, few interdisciplinary collaborations, few mechanistic studies, so understanding what's the mechanism of change, no animal model studies that can be useful to unravel neural circuitry, a lack of strong mechanistic measures and outcomes, and lack of biomarker development. So they asked us to give models and technologies that can help ease these issues of mechanisms, such as looking at animal models that move and help us understand, and additional technologies and use of those like EEG, fMRI, and motion capture. They asked for us to provide a future sustainable growth that will include more research and tools to facilitate the decreasing of the current gaps. And from that emerged the NIH Music-Based Intervention Toolkit. So this need for development of research methods and measures and deepening our understanding of the music is something that we're holding in mind here at the University of Kansas as we're moving through our changes and our aspirations for our graduate program as well as our research. It also brought to mind that we need additional postdoctoral experiences, which are growing currently in music therapy, but there are still less than a handful of those. And a lot of them, the postdoc experiences, are in related professions. The follow-up to this panel was then the publication from the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, of music-based intervention toolkits that provided information that will help guide the research trajectory and decrease the gaps that the NIH has noted in the music-based intervention research. So the aims of this toolkit are to provide recommendations that are aligned with NIH policy on rigor and reproducibility, to identify building blocks of music-based interventions, to help define common data elements for intervention protocols, to identify model outcome measures and biomarkers, and to provide a framework that can be used across the lifespan and conditions. Thus, they're providing some guidelines for music and health intervention research that can be used consistently and help shape that inconsistent terminology that we're finding in the literature. So all of these things that have been happening since 2015 and evolving into a kind of organized, active things about changing the research in music and health have been really helpful and supportive to us, but they also create a call to action. And so we're really taking that into consideration as we think about what is happening in our own research, but how are we also influencing the future researchers through our graduate program. So some of these calls to action that we've identified here are looking at really that the music-based intervention toolkit came out of the NIH based on the existing literature, but music therapists are best suited to address the examination of the music components within the context of music-based intervention and the most effective delivery method. I had a conversation once with a nurse researcher, and in conversation with myself and a couple of other music therapists, she looked at us and she said, "No one knows what you know." And so this is what we need to be doing better as music therapy researchers, is letting people know, what do we know? And one of the things we understand is the music in the context of change. We also have limited PhD training programs that prepare doctoral students for an academic career that's focused on research, differentiated from one focused on undergraduate teaching and training. So this is not something that is only a challenge for us here at KU, but it is a challenge for the profession. As these opportunities for funding became available, it was really clear that the majority of music therapy training programs are in smaller colleges and institutions and universities. And the one like at KU, at a research one, top tier research institution, also needs to be paying attention to the ways in which we're preparing students for these high level research grants. So we really want to look at having more music-based intervention research scientists, more doctoral students doing a postdoc research fellowship, greater rigor to the research training experiences in music-based intervention studies, and increased interdisciplinary collaborations in basic and applied science. So these are calls to action for the profession that we are paying attention to here at KU. And then also that this attention to research that also pairs with attention to changing directions in health needs. The global COVID-19 pandemic really gave us a lot of information about culture and context and how people are thinking about health, and made relevant additional changing health needs. So how do we pair our research with attention to diversity and cultural context, integrating the users of the service, the stakeholders in the research, and the participants as primary stakeholders in the development of the research and the interventions, while we're also considering the social determinants of health. So what are the experiences of the people with whom we're working that create barriers to health, and how we can address those things within the context of our research. So we're going to move now to more specifics about what we're doing here at KU in terms of both of our faculty, the four of us here, and our PhD students.
So we are honored at the University of Kansas to have a fourth faculty member. Professor Charcarol Fisher is a relatively new associate professor of the practice at KU. And Professor Fisher's research is largely focusing on the components of culture that exist within music and how that informs how we promote health and sustain music therapy practices through such. Professor Fisher's work has largely been with adolescents with complex trauma, and has recently presented and is publishing in regard to the considerations of hip hop culture in therapy, the use of music technology, electronic instrumentation, and laptops, computers in clinical practice, the consideration of the development of music-centered engagement for youth, how to create musical opportunities for youth, some who may not have access to those opportunities often, and considering culturally situated musicianship, understanding that music is always situated in a culture and that we have to take that into account when we are working with our clients. There is no picture of me up here because you can see my face here. I, as mentioned earlier by the wonderful introduction, have some particular interests. One of them is in the uniqueness of musicianship in music therapy. I believe we are somewhat different than our peers in performance and music education. Our musicianship looks different largely because it's always in relationship to the clients that we work with. We're not just recreating or improvising, we are facilitating, recreating, and improvising, and so on with our clients. I am a percussionist. I grew up a drum set player, got involved in a lot of musics from different cultures, including from West Africa. And I became very passionate about how percussion music can be used to promote health. So that's something that I'm commonly talking about, and am currently researching how percussion-based interventions look in music therapy. I'm also very interested and big on philosophical underpinnings of research and practice, whether that's related to understanding how we generate knowledge in our research, or how we have different ways of practicing and how we articulate those. And I am currently in a process with a speech therapy professor in developing different ways to think about interprofessional work. We currently have an interprofessional speech therapy and music therapy practicum at the University of Kansas. We've talked about taking our experiences so far and writing about them in research. And we are also beginning to put together and have planned for a study abroad this coming summer, which will give us other opportunities for research.
Good morning. As Deanna mentioned, I'm in my 24th year at KU, and I've been a board certified music therapist for 36 years. I have the fortune of teaching in both the music therapy and music education program, as I started my professional career as an elementary general music teacher. With that in mind, I hold my 3 levels in advanced masterclass in Orff Schulberg certification, which is a music education approach that focuses primarily on improvisation and composition. I mention this as my research has followed comparably, with one focus on inclusion of students with disabilities in music settings. And as Deanna mentioned, currently I'm co-editing an Oxford University Press handbook where we are targeting school-aged children in educational models, both from the music education and music therapy perspective. And I'm really excited about this potential resource with some researchers from around the globe. My second area is integrating that Orff approach into diverse clinical music therapy settings. I started a advanced practicum at the Adult Cancer Center some time ago, and they really were very interested in having some research done there. And so we started with integrating an Orff-based intervention into the chemotherapy suites, working one-on-one with the adults. That was a feasibility study. It was quite effective. We were very excited about some of the approaches, but what we found is that there were some questions that we needed answers on. So what has followed from that is a scoping review of emotional approach coping with adults and supportive cancer care. So that's sort of my 2 hats and the directions that I'm going at this time.
And real briefly, I'll just talk about some of my work. I have started a lab here called the Baby Music Intervention Research Lab, where we have a robust group of undergraduate research assistants and graduate research assistants. And really what my focus is, not only in looking at infants and families and health and promoting infant development and family health through music, but I'm also really very interested and spend a lot of time in theory-based music intervention development. So what does it look like to actually develop a music intervention that is targeted towards a specific health need? And through that, using this therapeutic function of music plan that Zeta mentioned in the introductions, which is basically a tool to identify and examine the specific features of the music elements as the active ingredients for change. So giving us information about how and why music is going to foster that change in a health intervention. And then through my work as in interdisciplinary collaborations and my ongoing clinical practice in the neonatal intensive care unit at University of Kansas Medical Center and Health System, really working to translate that intersection between research and practice. So what is it that we're doing in our research and how can that actually be applied in practice and advanced practice? And through that work in terms of developing music interventions and working to translate how that becomes practice guidelines, we're really working in a phased approach where we're examining an intervention in depth and understanding all the bits and parts of it before we move into a randomized control trial.
Now that you've had an opportunity to hear about us as faculty and our research interests, we want to introduce you to some of our current and former students and what they are working on. We're wonderfully fortunate to have 2 current doctoral students who received prestigious awards from the University of Kansas. This award is called the Chancellor's Research Fellowship. And each of these students, because of their research backgrounds, because of their leadership in the field, received this Chancellor's Doctoral Research Fellowship. Vivian Loke has a research focus on sleep development in premature infants. And she has a PhD goal to prepare for a career as a clinical researcher and to obtain a postdoctoral fellowship. So her interest, her track at this point is to continue research throughout her trajectory. Kristen O'Grady is a newer doctoral student who has a research focus in relation to long-term pediatric palliative care. And her current PhD goal is to develop capacity as a researcher to better understand research methods and processes from a range of approaches, and also to develop herself as an educator. So she is looking both at her ability to continue research, but also to be trained well so that she can teach the next generation. We also have two other doctoral students who started this year. Lorena Barefoot has a research focus on music therapy to enhance sense of presence and physiological awareness to strengthen treatments for specific phobias. This is a unique endeavor, one that I have not seen much, if any, on in our field. So we're looking forward to seeing what Lorena comes through with. Amy Wilson has a research focus on how music therapy fosters hope in relation to children, mental health, and hospice and bereavement. Amy is of the belief that hope is actually a cornerstone of how we can work with particular populations. Amy Smith is a former student at the University of Kansas, and her research agenda currently is working with, or has worked on in the past, community-based music programs on aspects of early child development, music elements that relate to enhanced language development in high-risk populations, and working with very preterm infants and their parents through music intervention to enhance auditory environments and improve language outcomes. Amy Smith, if I am not mistaken, is currently working as a postdoctoral researcher. Eugenia Hernandez Ruiz is an assistant professor of music therapy at Arizona State University, and therefore she maintains a strong research agenda while also teaching. Her research includes considerations of music therapy and autism through parent coaching, development of music therapy student research skills, music therapy and well-being, and something that's near and dear to her heart is the continued development of music therapy in Mexico and Latin America.
So our doctoral degree is a PhD in music education, which currently has two subplans, one in music education and one in music therapy. It's designed, although with a lot of flexibility, to be essentially a 3-year degree. The first 2 years target coursework and the completion of 3 research projects. The degree plan itself is intentionally crafted as quite open for coursework choice, with only a few required courses in the plan. There is a requirement for a minor that is chosen by the student that typically supports their clinical, their teaching, and/or their research interest, and is inclusive of coursework found within various programs across campus. We've been very appreciative of how our doctoral students have been welcomed into social work, into the research area, into human development, and various other programs across campus. This often leads to a faculty member from one of these areas actually being invited to sit on the candidate's doctoral committee due to their expertise in that area of interest. The 3 research projects that they work on during those first 2 years are intended to be publishable quality manuscripts using 3 diverse methodologies to launch the candidate's research agenda while supporting knowledge as they enter the dissertation phase, which is the 3rd year of that program. So with a bit more specificity, We have coursework that supports students in developing their own understanding of music therapy through wrestling with various philosophical, with theories, various different approaches to music therapy, beginning to dip into and develop models and frameworks that support intervention development and subsequent intervention research methods and studies. As this scaffolding of knowledge is acquired, students begin creating a phased research agenda that can encompass qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods designs as appropriate to the research questions that are inherent within their particular phase of their research plan. Alongside, we also strongly encourage and support doctoral students in developing their own advanced musicianship, their clinical field work, and their embedded intervention research. As mentioned on the previous slide, this is further supported through taking various courses from across campus as appropriate to their students' trajectory and interest, whether it be research, clinical, perhaps even supervision. So as a priority of the program, we as faculty are invested in mentoring and career development for our doctoral students. To that end, students have the opportunity for teaching assistantships, research assistantships, and mentoring opportunities within faculty research labs. As Bill mentioned, we currently have 2 Chancellor Fellows, and Eugenia Hernandez-Ruiz, who was also mentioned at Arizona State University, was a previous Chancellor's Fellow. This is one of the highest honors and levels of financial support for doctoral students on campus, and we have been very excited about how music therapy has been recognized in this way. So mentoring. Mentoring is both received by and provided by our doctoral students in teaching, clinical work, and research. Doctoral students have opportunities for a college teaching practica, working alongside or under the supervision of a faculty member. They have opportunities for clinical supervision, where they are mentoring undergraduate or graduate equivalency students as they become board certified music therapists, and of course, research mentoring. In particular, it is imperative that doc students begin developing their own line of research that supports their passion, although it's often aligned with a faculty member who may have expertise in that area. It is obviously not uncommon for a doctoral student to come to the University of Kansas for a specific faculty member who may choose to have as their mentor. As a budding mentor themselves, doctoral students are encouraged to develop that skill set by mentoring or co-mentoring undergraduate or master's level researchers. We are very fortunate to have the KU Center for Undergraduate Research. And through one of their programs called the Emerging Scholars Program, many of us as music therapy faculty have undergraduates serving on our research teams. This breadth of team then provides a direct pipeline for research mentoring opportunities for our doctoral students. And across the board, this is an exciting opportunity to see them grow and develop, whether they plan on going a research direction, a clinical direction, or perhaps a higher education teaching direction.
So as we look forward to our PhD programs, graduate programs, and our own research, we have some things that we would like to see happen and things that we're working on to help fill some of those gaps that we talked about earlier. We're looking at expanding our PhD opportunities as well as our accessibility through exploring distance hybrid format alongside with our residential program. So for example, our current, one of our Chancellor's Fellows, Kristen O'Grady, is actually living in New Jersey and doing a distance PhD. And development of our interdisciplinary collaborations and potential for interdisciplinary courses. So as we continue to foster our interdisciplinary collaborations, how can that then lead to greater accessibility to interdisciplinary courses? And as we vision our PhD growth and expansion, looking at increasing the numbers of people that we have in our PhD programs that would allow us to shift away from a subplan of music education and evolve into a PhD in music therapy that allows us to focus more specifically on the changing needs of music therapy as a profession, and potentially lead to two different tracks in PhD experience. One where there is more of applied or professional doctorate that focuses on the practice and supervision and teaching of music therapists, and one that really focuses on moving into those areas of research with a focus on both basic and applied science in music-based interventions. As well, we're continuing to foster our interdisciplinary collaborations and expanding our opportunities through things like the study abroad program in Bulgaria this coming year, next year, and also all of our variety of interdisciplinary collaborations, such as at the KU Medical Center, in pediatrics, pulmonary care, population health, and the Cancer Center, that are fostering opportunities for grant development and building awareness and capacity of our work in these interdisciplinary collaborations. And then a big picture, long-term goal is to develop the KU Center for Music Intervention Research, where we actually are taking a we're a leader in advancing the science of music-based interventions. We foster additional and deeper interdisciplinary collaborations, provide consulting, research assistantships, and postdoctoral training. So we're going to shift now away from looking at the research in the United States and what we're doing here at KU, and shift the lens a bit to what's happening in music therapy in Costa Rica.